We're just 25 days until Election Day, with thousands of Americans in 42 states already voting early and by mail. Needless to say, there's a lot at stake in this election. I sat down with my colleague Rachel Maddow earlier today to discuss the looming threat to our democracy. More on that later in this hour. But first, both candidates are working to get their message out in the final weeks of the campaign. Kamala Harris capping off a week-long media blitz with a Univision town hall, while Donald Trump rallied in Aurora, Colorado, each offering a very different take on the issue of immigration.
If you think about it, illegal immigration saved my life.
When I am elected president, I will bring back that border security bill, and I will sign it into law.
They come from the dungeons, think of that, the dungeons of the third world, from prisons and jails, insane asylums.
Focusing on what we must do to have an orderly and humane pathway to earn citizenship.
That's the contrast in this election. Democrats now bringing in the cavalry for the home stretch, sending Bill Clinton on a tour of the South, hitting events in Georgia and North Carolina in the coming days. As Barack Obama was the headliner in Pittsburgh last night, the first of several events he's scheduled to host for the Harris-Walz campaign.
I get it, why people are looking to shake things up. I mean, I am the hopey changey guy. So I understand people feeling frustrated and feeling we can do better. What I cannot understand is why anybody would think that Donald Trump will shake things up in a way that is good for you. If you had a family member who acted like that, you might still love him, but you'd tell him you got a problem. And you wouldn't put him in charge of anything. And yet, when Donald Trump lies or cheats or shows utter disregard for our Constitution, when he calls POWs losers or fellow citizens vermin, people make excuses for it. Whether this election is making you feel excited or scared or hopeful or frustrated or anything in between, do not just sit back and hope for the best. Get off your couch and vote. Put down your phone and vote. Grab your friends and family and vote. Vote for Kamala Harris.
Even before that rally, Obama was on message, stopping by a local campaign office to frankly address a key part of the Obama coalition, one that Kamala Harris will need in her corner.
We have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. That seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. I'm speaking to men directly. Part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president. And you're coming up with other alternatives and other reasons for it.
Joining me now is Aisha Mills, Democratic strategist, and Basil Smikle, Columbia University professor and an MSNBC political analyst. He was also a top aide to Hillary Clinton when she was a senator. My thanks to both of you for getting us started this evening. Aisha, I'd like to start with you. How powerful is what I'm calling the Obama factor for Kamala Harris?
Listen, the Obama factor is something that we only, believe that we could see once in a generation. It was that invigorating and that exciting. And the numbers, showed it, especially when he ran in 2008, his first run. It is very powerful and meaningful. Look, there are a lot of similarities there, right? You've got a diverse candidate who reflects the future of America, who has herself an immigrant story to tell about her own family members, and who is out there stumping and connecting with the masses. businesses, with real people, with workers, with folks from every walk of life all over this country. And that is exactly the hope and change kind of candidate and big tent candidate that Barack Obama was, and certainly that Kamala Harris is. So I think that this is it. I mean, we know that when more people show up and vote, when more Democrats get excited, that the Democrat actually wins. But certainly that is made up of a big, diverse group of Americans. And that's who he's pulling. That's who she's pulling.
You know, Basil, we can't count our chickens before they hatch, right? And when we look at stuff like the numbers for Kamala Harris and her support among black voters, it's actually still lower than what Joe Biden received when he won Pennsylvania in 2020. I wanted to get your thoughts about what you think is going on there.
Well, some of it might just be a wait and see. Remember, she's only been doing this for, less than 3 months. So the black men, like any other constituency, want the candidate to be able to come and talk to them about issues that are pertinent in their lives. And she's, I think, going back to Detroit to do a town hall. I believe that's going to be hosted by Charlemagne the God. So it's an incredible opportunity and platform for her to be able to speak directly to black men. I actually am in Philadelphia right now. My fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, is having a brotherhood breakfast tomorrow. We're going to be talking about this exact issue to make sure that we have the marching orders to go out and really engage black men. Now, and I want to be clear about this because, there are some parts of his message to African-American men that for many, and to some extent to me as well, sometimes seems like scolding, and I get that. At the same time, we also have to be mindful of the fact that there's a lot of negative messaging going directly to black men on platforms that they engage. And one of the challenges that we're all going to have in this cycle is to make sure that we debunk a lot of the misinformation and disinformation that's out there. And so in some ways, it's a shakeup to all of us, black men, but men in general, that a lot of the information that you're getting is being sent by the Trump campaign and Republicans because they think they know you better than you know yourself. And we have to be able to push back on that in every single way possible. And I think that really is the crux of the Obama message. They're sending information to us because of stereotypes of who they think we are. And we need to fight back on that.
Yeah, Aisha, I wanted to get your take on that because, Obama, there's a reason why I used the adverb a couple of minutes ago, that he spoke frankly to those men at that office, at that campaign office. And I don't know if you agree necessarily with Basil in terms of whether it came across as scolding by Barack Obama or it was a very blunt assessment of, and again, we're not going to paint everybody with the broad, paintbrush here, but maybe it was a very blunt assessment that there needs to be a gut check about what the value is of her as a candidate, which is infinitely better than what Donald Trump has to offer any black man.
Well, just speaking as someone who does not identify as a man, I have to say that stepping back, the thing that's on display here with this entire presidential campaign is really a tale of two types of masculinity. Generally, whether it be black masculinity or otherwise, it's really about masculinity. And so what you see on one side is this toxic masculinity that is very much about patriarchal. It's about bullying. It's about locker room talk. It's about bravado. Donald Trump is poking out his chest, claiming that he's just going to take care of the little women and they all need to stay at home and none of them should have cats and they should just have kids, right? Then you have on the other side, the Democratic side, you see a tenderness. You see a more holistic sense of manhood and masculinity. You see fathers, you see husbands, you see public servants who care deeply about people. Folks who are tough, obviously, Coach Walsh is also a veteran, right? He's also a coach, but he's a human. And when you look at Barack Obama, you see the multifacetedness of masculinity and some of the tenderness as well. And I think that that's what voters are actually watching play out in front of them. Do you want a toxic masculinity, bravado that undermines and demeans women, or do you want someone who believes that their mothers and their daughters and their sisters are all equal to them?
That's right.
Yeah. Do you want a toxic misogyny from Trump, or do you want something that's better? I mean, Basil, during that rally, also Obama taking several shots at Donald Trump with accuracy, by the way, including hitting back on those false talking points that Trump was somehow responsible for a strong economy. Take a quick listen.
The reason some people think, well, I don't know, I remember that economy when he first came in being pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good because it was my economy. that 75 straight months of job growth that I handed over to him. It wasn't something he did. I spent 8 years cleaning up the mess that the Republicans had left me the last time.
I mean, Basil, he speaks the truth, right? I mean, he would know. Do you think that messaging, though, do you think it's being heard not just by Democrats, though? The fact that there's a economy that is responsible, the responsibility of somebody like Donald Trump that failed so badly, and that once again, the Biden-Harris administration had to pick up the pieces from a Republican administration to try to make it better for all Americans.
You know, that was one of my favorite lines and parts of the speech, because it actually echoes, and there's a way to tie this back to some of the points that I made earlier. You know, when you're talking to particularly voters in the African-American community, especially Black men, but not exclusively, you know, there's a sense that we have to be twice as better, twice as prepared to be in the same room as our white counterparts. But it also means that there's a lot of work that we do on the ground every single day that other people take credit for. I say that point because I remember David Dinkins, when he was mayor of the city of New York, brought crime down. But because Rudy Giuliani came right after him, took all the credit for the work that his administration had done. This is something that happens day to day in our community. I'm glad that Barack Obama called it out. And that's why we have to be those messengers to be able to carry that message forward. So I do think it resonates that Democrats actually know how to run government. Time and time again, there's proof of that. He talks about it on that stage, but that's something that's a message point that we've got to continue to hit home.
Versus Republicans that actually can't pass budgets to be able to keep our government funded and keep on punting that down the road. So, Aisha, we also know Bill Clinton, for example, he's going to stump for Kamala Harris in the South. We've been talking about Barack Obama, big guns coming out for the Harris-Walz campaign. But you know who we don't see? It's the crickets of silence. We don't see George Bush, do we? We don't see people like that stumping for Donald Trump. Do you think Republicans are taking note of the absence of marquee names like somebody like George Bush?
Listen, we don't see his own wife, Melania Trump, out there stumping really hard for him, right? And in fact, she's sitting around reminding everybody that she's pro-abortion.
That she's pro-choice,
there's certainly, you know, a disjointed, comical situation going on